Three Indian soldiers are dead. Not in a terrorist attack, not in a natural disaster, not in a war involving India. According to reports, they were killed when missiles struck commercial vessels carrying Indian crew members in the waters near the Strait of Hormuz. And what happened next has sparked a fierce debate in India. Because while families mourned the loss of their loved ones, many people were asking one question: why was India so quiet? The Strait of Hormuz is one of the most important waterways on Earth, a narrow passage through which a significant portion of the world's oil supply travels every day. For years, it has been a flashpoint for global tensions. But in June, those tensions took a deadly turn. A series of commercial vessels operating in the region came under attack. Among them were ships managed by Indian companies and staffed largely by Indian sailors. The first vessel suffered severe damage after a strike triggered a fire on board. 24 Indian crew members were rescued eventually, but the second attack would end differently. The vessel was carrying Indian crew members when the strike hit. Rescue operations began immediately. Most of the crew were saved, but 3 men never made it home: P. Suresh, Aditya Sharma, Shivanand Chaurasia. 3 names that would soon become part of a bigger controversy. For their families, this wasn't a geopolitical issue. It wasn't about military strategy. It wasn't about international diplomacy. It was personal. P. Suresh was an experienced chief engineer, a man who had spent years working at sea. Reports suggest he had even stayed beyond his contract period because a replacement hadn't yet arrived. Aditya Sharma was only 23 years old, just beginning his career, the only son of his parents. According to reports, his family received a message saying he was safe. An hour later, he was gone. And like countless other seafarers working far from home, Shivanand Chaurasia had simply been trying to build a better future for his family. Instead, 3 families received news that no family want to hear. But while the tragedy unfolded, another story was taking shape, a political one. Critics began questioning the government's response. They pointed out that there was no immediate strong public condemnation, no major diplomatic confrontation, no dramatic press conference, no visible show of anger, and that led many to ask, if Indian citizens can be killed in an international military incident, what should India's response be? The debate became even more intense because Prime Minister Narendra Modi was receiving congratulations from world leaders during the same period. Supporters argued that diplomacy must be handled carefully. Critics argued that the timing created a troubling image, an image where political celebrations appeared more visible than the deaths of Indian citizens abroad. Whether fair or unfair, that perception quickly spread across social media. Of course, the reality of international politics is never simple. India and United States share deep strategic ties, defense cooperation, trade partnership, and technology agreements. Governments often choose diplomacy over public confrontation, but critics argue that diplomacy and accountability should not be mutually exclusive. They ask, can a country call itself a global rising power if it cannot strongly defend its citizens when they are harmed? And that's where the story becomes larger than politics. Because this isn't only about 3 sailors. India has one of the largest seafaring communities in the world. Hundreds of thousands of Indians work on ships across international waters. Thousands operate in the Gulf region alone. Every day, they sail through some of the world's most dangerous routes, keeping the global trade moving. Most people never hear their stories until something goes wrong. The deaths of these 3 sailors have reignited an old question. How much influence does India really have on the global stage? Is India strong enough to demand answers from powerful nations? Or are there limits to what diplomacy can achieve? Depending on who you ask, the answers are very different. But one fact remains unchanged. 3 Indian sailors left home to do their job and they never returned. Because behind every headline, behind every diplomatic statement, and behind every political argument, there are real people. Fathers, sons, husbands, families waiting for a phone call that will never come. And perhaps that is the most important part of this story, not the politics, not the geopolitics, but the human cost. The cost paid by ordinary people caught in the middle of extraordinary events. And the question that remains is simple. Will their deaths change anything? Or will they just become another forgotten chapter in the endless story of global politics?